Hello and welcome to the Practical Leadership Podcast, where I interview great leaders and try to extract their wisdom and their experience for you to learn from, and hopefully avoid making their mistakes. If you want to upgrade your leadership skills in 25 minutes, check out practical-leadership.academy. Mehdi Tounsi, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Can you introduce yourself?
Well, that's I guess it should be a simple one. So my name is Mehdi. I'm a Senior Regional Director for Open Sesame. I've been in the learning industry for, probably more years than I could care to count, but north of 20 years within the learning industry. I've always been excited about people and working with people and challenging the status quo. So that's probably why I stuck with the learning industry.
And you're ridiculously well traveled. I mean, from the UK to Australia to New York, back to the UK to...
I would say I'm very fortunate. And for those who haven't picked it up yet, I'm French, so born and raised in the beautiful city of Lyon. And after finishing my studies, I moved to the UK. And then after spending 7 years in the UK, I had the opportunity to go and work in Australia. So I've worked in Australia for a few years. And then a few years ago, got the opportunity to go and work in the US. So was based in New York, short of 3 years, and then moved back to London. So I'm just very fortunate to have been at the right place at the right time. But I wouldn't say I'm necessarily that well traveled out. I know there's many places I still haven't seen and would love to see.
Well, I don't know if it's quality over quantity, though.
I was in the Middle East last week. I was in Dubai. But despite all the years, I still get excited at the prospect of traveling and going to a new place and, meeting new people and discovering. Somehow I managed to remain a kid at heart. And that certainly helped a great deal throughout the most of my career.
I know what you mean when it comes to the travel and the adventure. I used to travel a lot for work. And in the same way that my kids really get excited whenever we go anywhere new, you have this degree of this frisson of apprehension. It's like, plus the excitement of getting to go somewhere new, do something new, but meet new people. How am I going to be able to understand them? Will they understand me? Is it? Yeah, it doesn't matter about the languages.
It's you're spot on, Paul. I'd say, and maybe that's also over the past few years to the detriment of my waistline and the food. It's just I get so excited at the prospect of being able to eat different foods, and that's probably why I love living in London. It's just that opportunity to be able to eat something different based on what I fancy.
You're not wrong. I hadn't actually thought about that, but it's a big part of it is the food as well. It's one of the first things I touched down in Oslo Airport, and they've got this brilliant, it's an airport, right? But they've got this brilliant hot dog stand, and I love Norwegian hot dogs. First thing, I don't care what time it is. I've just had my breakfast, and it's like 10 o'clock at night. I'm going to have a fabulous Norwegian hot dog with this.
So hold on, Paul. What is a Norwegian hot dog? Because you've got my curiosity now. But there's two things I had not even put together: Norway and hot dogs. So
it's a thing. When they have this wonderful thing called the fransk hot dog, where they have like a baguette hollowed out, and they put this lovely creamy dressing and then shove the hot dog into it. But you can also have the other one, was like a traditional, like a New York type thing, where they have really crunchy, crispy, oniony bits on it or something.
Is it that specific relish to go with that?
Yeah, it's a really nice, hot dog dressing, they call it. Anyway.
Well, see, there you go. Because I would have never put Norway as a food destination anyway. So.
It's not. Well, no, actually, that's not fair. It's not fair. It is actually. It's like London maybe 15 years ago. It used to not be a destination you go to, but it is actually quite something now. They have amazing restaurants now. But it's sometimes it's not necessarily the fancy food that actually turns you on. It's a really.
No, so I'm 100% with you. It's two things. It's one has to be wise because I love street food, but depending which country you're traveling to, one want to be very careful with street food. But at the same time, it's also I like just staying away from like your obvious. I would stay away from like any chain or whatever. And so, as an example, when I was in Dubai, I just discovered that restaurant that actually has been voted one of the top 50 restaurants in the Middle East and North Africa, called Trois Fils. And it's actually so you can't book a table. It's first come, first serve kind of basis. And I love that they, they're not taking it to a posh level. But the food is a mix of, it literally is a mix of it's an Asian fusion with Middle Eastern or French. It's just wonderful. It really is amazing food, really tasty, decently priced, which is always important. So I love finding places like that are mostly visited by locals, but where you have to queue, because that's always a good sign that you're heading for a good place.
Marvelous. Right, we better get back on track, I tell you. So tell me, after all of your travels, all of your experiences, and you've been in this learning industry, kind of like me as well, for 20 plus years, and you're showing your age there, talking about CD-ROMs, what about laser discs? Oh my God. In that time, at what point did you first become a people manager?
So for a good chunk of that, I was an IC, so I was an individual contributor, and I kind of enjoyed it quite a lot. And I think I enjoyed it because, and I've only reflected on that. In fact, it's my CEO that helped me reflect on that recently, that I'm a self-starter, and it's not me singing my praises. It's more the case that I get far more excited and engaged when we have a blank canvas and we need to build things from scratch versus scaling something that already exists. And that's not where I'll get excited, and it's definitely not where my skills lie. So it's much more in that opportunity of being able to build things from scratch. And I strongly believe that before asking anyone to do anything, I have to be prepared to do it, and I have to know how to do it myself, because then otherwise it's very hard to just lead people into it. So it's probably about 10 years into my career, that's when I started having to lead people. And I realized that because I love people, because I love this industry, it's much easier for me to surround myself with people that are quite autonomous and need probably more guidance and coaching versus being told what to do. Because I don't necessarily see the point of, the whole point of having people around you is not necessarily for me to tell them what to do, but rather just help them be the best version of themselves. And I think if you remember I think it was called Good Morning Britain, or it was a TV program when I first moved to the UK, and they had that chap called Mr. Motivator. They had the most ridiculous outfits. And I quite fancy myself as that. It's really helping people to be able to deliver the best they can deliver, and just allow them to remain within the remit of what we require as a business.
How do you reconcile you're surrounding yourself with people who are self-starters like you, but at the same time you just said you feel that you need to be able to do everything yourself before you can ask anyone else?
Well, so first of all, I don't. That doesn't mean that I need to be able to do it well, and that's where actually that helps me recognize and identify the right people for the job, because there are many things that I had to do myself, and I certainly did not do a good job at it. But it helped me understand what is required, and then be able to identify that person is going to be amazing at doing that. So I want to be able to support that person and help that person, but I want to be able to tell them, okay, that's what to expect. I don't want to throw people in the deep end without having any understanding of what I'm asking of others, if that makes sense.
So you want a degree of domain knowledge, but not necessarily expertise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I don't think you can be an expert in everything.
No.
And fair enough, when we started the conversation, I was talking about how impressed I am with you as a polyglot and your language skills. But I think I'm a jack of all trades, but an expert at none. So it's more about, okay, who are the right people, and how can I get those people to be the best at what they do within their specific remit. And that's where maybe I'm decent, I'd say, but I don't have the expertise in any specific field as much as just a more macro understanding of our industry and the environment we're in, to be able to help the people I surround myself with. And in fact, I shouldn't say I surround myself with. It's the opposite. I strongly believe in the servant leader as an approach and philosophy.
Okay. It's the joy of coaching, I think, is part of that. You don't actually have to have the answers.
No, and so if anything, it's probably the best learning. It's two things, and I might shock a few people, but being French, I need to embrace humility as often as I can. So admitting, I think there's a great, learning step in being able to admit to the people that you're supposed to lead that you don't necessarily have the answers, but then also being able to ask the question, so that we can maybe as a group come to the right answer. And then ultimately, yes, I'll have to make that call because I'm accountable for it. But that's my job, and that's my choice. But yeah, having that collaborative approach to solving things, and just being able to say, honestly, I don't know. What do you think? Help me understand.
What would be the advice then in that context that you would give to a new people manager?
I'd say it's probably two things. It's really not to underestimate the power of listening. Really listen to and do not dismiss any ideas. So really allow for people to be able to come up with ideas and not dismissing them. And then the other one is probably, it's something I've learned a long time ago. I read a book by I think it's a Ken Blanchard book. It's called Well Done, as in like whale, the fish, WHALE, and done. And the book talks about the example of how in one of the Florida parks where they train like killer whales, how they train them, and how the training is done by putting the emphasis on praise. And one of the examples that completely resonated with me, especially now that my kids are teenagers, they were saying when like a kid learns to like walk and how he or she would make like a few first steps and then fall and then try again. What we do as parents, the first thing is first you allow them to try those steps, knowing that they will fall, and then you just praise them so that they start again. And I've taken that with me. That resonated with me like big time. So allowing your people maybe sometimes to make mistakes, to be able to learn from those mistakes, even though okay, that's not going to pay off. I'd rather you learn for yourself, and I'll be there to support you and guide you through that. But okay, if you feel strongly that, please try it. My conviction is that that's not going to be the right thing, and you probably failed. But I'd rather it's a collective thing and it's controlled, and you can learn through that process versus dismissing and not allowing you to understand why it was a mistake in the first place. So allowing people to make mistakes, I think is crucial, and also almost embracing mistakes, not in the sense that your culture should be, yay, let's celebrate mistakes, well done, you've made another mistake, but just it is part of the learning process. Allowing for those mistakes to happen, because from those mistakes there's so many other opportunities that open up. So that would be my advice.
What would you say is your best practical how-to then?
To probe and really ask questions to try and understand, not take the whatever first answer is given to push. Tell me more. Okay, tell me more. What do you mean? How? Good luck. And really push it and listen at the same time. Try and suss out whether it's the person and whatever challenge they're dealing with, or just a situation, but really probing as much as possible. So pushing the asking approach, the tell me more approach, to the maximum, so that you really have a very clear picture.
So that's a sales discovery technique?
I was going to say it's a life skill discovery technique. I don't know that I don't know that it's specific to sales, and it is even in everyday. You meet people, how I'm good. People never. If I'm not good, I'm not going to say it like right away. And the funny thing is, sometimes I try and people say, how is it going? And I say, oh, it's awful. So, okay, good. And then it's just because we're not listening. No one is prepared to listen in the first instance. So, by repeating and pushing until you get to the bottom of, okay, how is it really going? Just tell me, and then I think sometimes we underestimate the power of open questions. And it's not, again, I don't think it's something that's specific to sales. I think it's, to anything.
How is it really going?
Yeah.
I like that.
Thank you. I can't take credit for it, but if no one does, I'll happily do.
Totally. Yeah, it's the Tounsi formula.
Yeah, I like that.
Was there an event or a mistake that perhaps shaped the way that you manage and lead people today?
Yeah, I'd say my experience in the US, which from a business standpoint probably turned out to be a total disaster. In fact, it was from a business standpoint, it was a really total disaster. There's lots of mistakes on my part in terms of assessing, accepting. So it's funny. Just earlier on, we were talking about going global and how there's not one size fits all. And when I went to the US, I wrongly went to the US with that assumption that it's going to be very similar to here. They speak the same language, can't be that different. And boy, oh boy, was I in for a surprise that culturally, I've just probably every mistake in the book I've made. I've learned a great deal from it. But it's what was interesting is that, so from a business standpoint, made the wrong decisions, had the wrong approach, really all along the line, every mistake you can think of, I think I've gone through. And then at a personal level, the first year was really tough for us as a family because I took my family there. And again, I think I had underestimated the fact that culturally it would be far more culture shock almost than if you went to, I don't know, Japan or a country where it's a different languages, everything is different, and you have that expectation. And we didn't have that expectation. So I think that helped me in hindsight. I'm glad that happened because I learned a great deal. I learned to make less assumption, ask more questions, probably dig deeper in those specific questions, in assessing the situation, in allowing ideas to flourish as well, not killing ideas straight off the bat. That I think that was one of the biggest learning steps for me, is just being able to appreciate that. Keep an open mind, let it all out. We were talking about drawing earlier on, and that creative drawing process, and you made a great recommendation. I'll definitely try. And maybe that's what I missed. Maybe I went straight away thinking, no, I know exactly. And God, boy, oh boy, did I not know? So that was yeah. I'm glad that happened. As painful as it was also very useful.
Can we dig in that a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
So you said, it was the first of the two pieces of advice you wanted to give to someone would be listen and don't dismiss ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you evolve? How did you get that as a piece of guidance you would give? Because something then must have driven you. So at some point you've dismissed something.
I've dismissed other people's opinion, other people's expertise, it probably, I guess, partly arrogance on my part, thinking, well, I've got a good track record, so surely I know best. And especially in the context of the US, just realizing that it is a very different market. Prior to that, most of the work I had done, whether it was in Australia, whether it was, so when I was based in the UK, I mostly worked across the EMEA market. So I had a decent understanding of those markets. I had no understanding of the US market. And those around me and those that I hired that also came up with, things that would have avoided very painful situations, I dismissed. And I thoroughly regret now not listening to them, not listening to their opinion and their advice, thinking I knew best.
Mehdi knows best. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I should know better because I've been married, almost 20 years. So I know more often than not. I do not know. But yeah, at the time, that was the. I think there was it's probably a mix of arrogance and being convinced that it would be similar to what I had experienced before, but it wasn't at all. I didn't allow myself to ask the questions. I didn't, ask around, ask the right people, really understand. Really, they tell me more. I did not do that at all. I went just almost the cliche of what I expected things to be, and I didn't want to see. That's exactly what I've done. I just went all guns blazing. Yeah, just move away. I knew nothing, but
Do you know, it's a recurring theme among the thoughtful, creative, intelligent people that I've been talking to in the last month or so on this podcast. And it's just an inability to learn from our mistakes. You'd think that, my mum used to say, once is an accident, twice is stupidity. He said, no, twice is just getting started. It really is. There was a lovely chap, a Norwegian chap, Thomas Berglund, and he was saying, he hires the wrong people. He falls in love with people, I think. You hire the wrong people. He's done it again and again and again. You try to put these things in place to stop you. Please save me from myself.
It's not an easy one, but first of all, I don't think I would sign up anytime soon now for a big project like that without really having literally a dedicated project team. I was very, very naive about how I've approached things, and I can only blame myself for that, because I could have said, "Oh, hold on, let's plan things properly. Let's do more research. Let me ask more questions. Let's ask the people I'm asking to do the things to tell me what they think, and not just tell them what I need them to, or what I thought I needed them to do."
What is it, 80%, 85% of the trouble you have, you can solve in advance by finding the right people, having the right people in the right jobs?
So I totally agree. It's funny if I look at that specific experience. No, actually, no, I'm lying, because I see myself now exactly in a slightly different but similar predicament, in the sense that, I maybe just like Thomas, I love people, and maybe I put sometimes too much self-belief in people being able to do things that I think they want to do, and it might not necessarily be the case, or maybe they're not best suited for that. If you find a way of solving that one, I certainly would be happy to listen to it.
This is a random example. It's not good. It kind of fits in with our food fantasies. That I sent my son to school with a packed lunch. He goes every day with a packed lunch. He usually makes it himself, but this day we had leftover chicken. And he loves his meat. I like my meat. He loves his meat. So he went with a couple of drumsticks, chicken drumsticks, right? Because I said, "Oh, you'd love these. You'll love these." And he said, "Oh, yeah, Daddy. Yeah, I'll take them." Hated them, didn't have them, brought them home again. Kid was starving. I was thinking, God, because what was he doing? I said, "Oh, you'll love these," thinking that he would love them, but no. He did it because he believed kind of that he would, but he believed it because I said he would believe. And of course, if we're people, then we're good at this. We're good at getting people to do things, but without perhaps reflecting or asking the questions in the first place. Is this really, do you really want them, or do you just want a sandwich? Are you really ready for this opportunity, for this task? Is it something you think we should be doing in the first place, or should you just have an apple with your lunch instead?
I totally agree, and I'm definitely guilty as charged, where sometimes I allow my excitement or passion or whatever it's called to almost dictate the agenda, and maybe because people want to please you, then they'll go with it, while in fact they know deep down, and you should know deep down, that it's not the best fit. And to your point, maybe it should be just a cheese sandwich, not necessarily drumsticks. But yeah, I like that. I'm going to call it the drumstick analogy now.
That's it. It is what it is. In some way, I think, because I know I tend to get quite excited about things sometimes. I do try to dial it back down from 12 down to about a 9. Your passion and enthusiasm for things, and your ability to persuade and convince people. Number one, you convince and persuade yourself. Number two, you convince and persuade the people around you strongly. And then we're both kind of nice people, right? Ish.
I'd like to think so.
And I think perhaps that some of the people around us, even though we don't hire people who are yes men or women, they don't really want to say no, because they're going to kick the puppy. I mean, just kick the damn puppy and give him a cheese sandwich. Oh my goodness, where's this going? This is a terrible analogy, but you see the idea.
No, but you're spot on, Paula, and I think that's that really thin line between having people that buy into that passion and like enthusiasm, and at the same time have people that are able to say no, I disagree because. But then you don't want someone who's just spends their time almost just killing the whole enthusiasm and disagree. So it's that tough balance. I wouldn't want a yes boss type of person. I want people to be their own people and have their own opinion and be able to come up sometimes with really constructive disagreement on topics. And I do enjoy disagreements, but it's sometimes for the benefits of the group. I'd rather those who are always in disagreement would not be.
Yeah. I mean, I found when I used to do big team meetings was at the beginning I'd have the same 3 or 4 slides every single time. And it was around the confidentiality of what we're talking about and the values of the company and their role. And their role was to speak up. Your role is not to sit there and nod. Your role is actually to find the problems and why the hypothesis should fail. You're looking to falsify the hypothesis. It's a scientific method, right? You put forward the idea. Everybody's job is to break it. Not to say no because, just because, but to say, well, it's not going to work because. And then when that runs out, you're thinking, okay, actually, you could have a thing here.
It's actually very interesting. Last week I was attending a workshop and we did an exercise that they call a pre-mortem.
Oh, they're wonderful.
Yeah,
Yes.
I had not done that before, and I thought it's very interesting because, to your point, it's very constructive, as into okay, what could kill what we're doing now, but then let's solve the counter. Okay, if that happens and not completely kills what we're doing in our business and what have you, how do we make sure that we still survive and be able to? So I really enjoy that exercise, and maybe that's an exercise that should be. I don't know if there's a way of making it simpler to a certain extent, but be put to the test or to groups more often. I plan on doing it with my team because I think it's important that we reassess constantly ourselves and how we do things. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
It's a powerful tool to use for change when you're bringing a new idea of change in. We're going to do it like this, okay? But before we do it, what we have to do is we have to go through and brainstorm and find all the different ways that we are going to make this fail. What are we going to do that is going to stop this working? Who are we going to talk about? How are we going to present it? All the different things we're going to do to break it, to falsify it, to not to falsify it, but to prevent it from ever working.
Yeah.
And then once you've got that big list, you go through and say, how do we not do that stuff? How do we not do the stuff that would make it fail?
That's really good, and I love how it just galvanizes everyone to really think outside the box. That's the other thing. I only thrive if I can surround myself with people who are able to think outside the box, and to a certain extent, it is also my job to push people outside of their comfort zone so that they can think outside the box. Mm-hmm. That's another thing I think that is important in terms of management or leading people, is to have that diversity of ideas and perspectives.
And diversity of thought. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are you working on at present?
What are we working on? I'm excited because my team is growing. So it's really being able to find, and it's funny because we preach on a daily basis how we can help organizations, make the best use of their talent, and the war on talent is still very much on. I've been struggling to find people. So I'm trying to grow the team. I'm trying to find, and so I'm very uncultured, so I'll make reference to football, but I'm not looking for a superstar. I'm looking for someone who will add value to the team. So someone who's great in their own right, but when added to the team, then makes the team even better than it currently is. And so I'm working on that, and I'm finding it challenging. And then we have, in a few weeks' time, we have our first private event for our customers in EMEA. So I really look forward to being able to meet people face to face. I missed that, and we discussed it earlier on, but I really missed being face to face and exchanging with people, and being able to just have a drink and have a chat, and beyond just the realm of, okay, what's your budget? What are we looking at? How are we implementing this? But what's really on your mind as a person, as a business, where, and because we have, like, most of us have common challenges. So I think there's value in being able to exchange and put it out there and see where that takes us.
What do you read or listen to?
So I must confess that because I cycle to work, I'm a huge fan, and shameless plug, but Blinkist. So Blinkist, they do like book digest, and they have audio versions of them. So I'm a big fan of a lot of their books, which incidentally, eventually when I come across like a good Blinkist, I end up buying the book and then reading the full book. Recently, I've read it a while ago, but I've reread it recently because I guess for me it's a good. You mentioned very kindly at the beginning that I was well traveled and what have you, and even though sometimes I think to myself, oh yeah, great, I've lived and traveled in so many different places, I know a lot. And I've read The Culture Map by Aaron Meyer, and I realized, boy oh boy, I'm so glad I read that book, because it's to your point, actually, it's probably what you do, Paul, as well, is there are things we know, but until it is structured and someone tells us how you should go about it, now you can't really put your finger on it to get value out of it. So just like you do that for leaders all around, that book did that for me in terms of being able to help educate those around me about how we should do business when we're dealing with 114 countries in our case for my EMEA market, and not go with that assumption that I know it all, or it's just our way and there are no other ways. So I love the fact that it really allows you to, funny thing, I had never realized that, how French I was in my way of communicating, in the sense that there's the whole chapter about how the French seem to be quite controversial or disruptive in meetings, and always there's even an expression like l'exception française. So for every rule there is an exception, and that would be the French. And the purpose is not to just go against it. It's just because I think it's innate culturally that it is through disagreement that we can come to an idea together. But it has to start with being able to almost do that pre-mortem process for everything in order to agree. And it's not personal, it's just the way things are conducted, versus I guess the English is slightly different, because for me sometimes there's a lack of assertiveness. Everything is very polite, and you might be missing that. So what does it mean? Do you agree? Do you not agree? I'm not quite clear. But so I great books, strongly recommend it. For anyone who's not necessarily doing business internationally, but wants to better understand communication styles and how culture really impacts your communication style.
The Culture Map's a great book.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. What would you like to thank young Mehdi for doing?
For being curious. I think that's the thing that, how I ended up doing all the things I've been fortunate enough to do and go to all those places. It was curiosity. I know, the saying is curiosity killed the cat. I'm still around, thankfully. But it's just that it's not just a case of no fear. It was more than the fear was there, but the curiosity was much stronger than the fear. And that's just being curious. Okay, trying to work there. Oh, let's try that. Going there. Oh, let's try that. The imposter syndrome's been probably all around my career. I've always had the imposter syndrome. I always felt that I was not necessarily good enough, not necessarily skilled enough, not had enough experience. But the curiosity of how can I do that? How can I live there? How can I work with that group or that group? That has always been almost a stronger driver than all the other things. So I would thank Mehdi for allowing his curiosity to really take over any other feelings that came after that.
And lastly, as we wrap up, where can we find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. So Mehdi Tounsi. Twitter, even though I'm not overly active, I would be at Learn Diversity. And that's it. I don't necessarily do social media, so I'm afraid. But Twitter and LinkedIn, I quite like them. There's lots of fascinating people, lots of very nice things to read and exchange on. So feel free to reach out on any of those two.
Mehdi, from a journey from the UK to Australia to New York City as a self-starter who says we shouldn't dismiss other people's ideas, praise people as you train them, ask lots of questions, dig in, and mistake maker and learner extraordinaire. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thanks a million, Paul. Always a pleasure catching up, and I certainly look forward to more conversations.
That's a wrap. Thank you for joining me today. Your homework: subscribe and share this with a friend or colleague. Please leave your 5-star review and any comments you have, because that really helps me to improve every day, and it helps people to discover me online. If you want to upgrade your leadership skills in 25 minutes, you should check out practical-leadership.academy.